After 15 years of running our family restaurant for barely minimum wage, my parents announced they were giving it to my younger brother who worked there for 6 months because he has business school connections. And when I stopped covering every shift and emergency, they called panicking about health inspections, and I said let Trevor handle it since he is the chosen one, and within 3 weeks they lost their liquor license and begged me to come back. The folder sat on the kitchen counter of my childhood home. Heavy cream-colored paper with gold lettering that spelled out succession planning documents. My mother stood by the stove making her famous chicken soup even though it was 70 degrees outside. My father sat at the head of the table where he had presided over family dinners for 40 years. Trevor, my younger brother, leaned against the counter looking uncomfortable but trying to hide it with a casual smile. I stood in the doorway still wearing my chef's coat from the lunch shift. Flour dusted my sleeves and my feet ached from 12 straight hours on the line. The restaurant, my family's restaurant, had been my entire adult life since I was 19 years old. My mother turned from the stove and said we wanted to talk to me about the future of Castellanos. She said they were not getting any younger and it was time to make plans for succession. I nodded slowly. This was a conversation we should have had years ago. I had been running the restaurant's day-to-day operations since I was 25. I knew every supplier, every regular customer, every quirk of the ancient oven that required specific coaxing to maintain even heat. My father cleared his throat and said they had been thinking very carefully about this decision. He said the restaurant needed fresh vision to stay competitive. New ideas to attract younger customers. Modern business strategies. Trevor is taking over as owner and operator when we retire next year, my father announced. He will be the face of Castellanos moving forward. The words hung in the air like smoke. I stared at my younger brother. Trevor, who had worked at the restaurant for exactly 6 months. Trevor, who had spent the last 8 years getting an MBA and working for a consulting firm in Boston. Trevor, who could not tell the difference between basil and oregano. My mother said I would still be head chef, of course. She said my position was secure and I was the heart of the kitchen. She said Trevor would handle the business side while I continued doing what I did best. I asked why Trevor and not me. The question came out calmer than I felt. My father said Trevor had the business education and the professional network to take Castellanos to the next level. He said I was brilliant in the kitchen, but running a restaurant required skills beyond cooking. Trevor spoke up then. His voice had that practiced empathy he had learned in business school. He said he hoped I understood this was about what was best for the family legacy. He said he valued my culinary expertise and we would make a great team. I looked at my mother, who was stirring her soup with intense concentration. At my father, who could not quite meet my eyes. At Trevor, who genuinely seemed to believe he deserved this. Congratulations, I said finally. I hope you know what you are getting into. I walked out before anyone could respond. Behind me I heard my mother call my name, but I kept walking. Down the hallway lined with photos of the restaurant through the decades. My grandfather standing proudly in front of the original location in 1962. My father as a young man learning the business. Me at age 19 grinning on my first day of work. Trevor did not appear in any of them until a single photo from last Christmas. That night I sat in my small apartment above a bookstore and looked at my life with brutal honesty. 15 years at Castellanos. 15 years of 70-hour weeks. Holidays spent in the kitchen while other people celebrated with their families. Relationships that withered because I was always working. A culinary degree I earned while working full-time taking classes at night. I had sacrificed everything for a restaurant that would never be mine. My phone buzzed with texts. Trevor saying we should talk. My mother saying I was being dramatic. My father saying nothing at all, which was somehow worse. I turned off my phone and opened my laptop. For the first time in 15 years I started thinking about what I wanted instead of what the restaurant needed. The next morning I arrived at Castellanos at precisely 9 in the morning. 2 hours later than usual. The morning prep crew looked startled to see me stroll in at a reasonable hour. "Everything okay, chef?" asked Marco, my sous chef who had been with me for 6 years. "Perfect," I replied. "Just decided to stop arriving before dawn for a change." The day proceeded normally enough. I prepped for lunch service. Trained the new line cook. Handled the usual chaos of a busy restaurant. But when 5 o'clock came and my shift was supposed to end, I did something I had never done in 15 years. I left. The evening sous chef looked shocked when I handed over command of the kitchen. I had always stayed through dinner service to handle any issues. Always been there until closing to ensure everything was perfect. Not tonight. Tonight I went home. I cooked myself dinner in my own kitchen for the first time in weeks. I read a book. I went to bed at a reasonable hour. My phone exploded with messages around 8. The gas oven had stopped working and no one knew how to coax it back to life. The evening rush was backing up. They needed me. I turned my phone on silent and kept reading. Trevor called me into his office the next morning. He had taken over my father's old space and already redecorated. The photos of our grandfather and father were gone. Replaced with his MBA diploma and some generic motivational art about synergy. He said we needed to talk about last night. He said the kitchen had struggled without me there. I pointed out that my shift ended at 5. I was not scheduled for evening service. He said I had always stayed to help. He said the restaurant depended on my flexibility. I leaned back in my chair and said, "Trevor, you are the owner now. These operational issues are yours to solve. I am just the head chef. 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. His expression shifted from confused to frustrated. He said that was not realistic. He said restaurants did not operate on bankers' hours. I agreed. I said that was why the owner needed to be prepared to handle emergencies and operational issues. I said I assumed his MBA had taught him about resource management and contingency planning. Trevor's face flushed. He said I was being difficult on purpose. I stood up. I said I was being an employee. A head chef with clearly defined responsibilities. Nothing more, nothing less. I suggested he figure out how to manage the restaurant he had been given. Over the next 2 weeks I watched the carefully orchestrated chaos I had maintained for years start to unravel. The ancient ice machine that required specific maintenance procedures broke down because Trevor did not know about the monthly cleaning protocol I had established. A shipment from our seafood supplier was rejected because Trevor had not realized you needed to inspect each delivery personally to ensure quality. The health inspector showed up for a surprise visit and found violations in the storage area because no one had been doing my usual evening walkthroughs. My father called me in a panic about the health inspector. He said we had never failed an inspection in 40 years. He said I needed to fix this. I said that sounded like an owner's responsibility. I said Trevor was welcome to ask me questions during business hours and I would help where I could. But I was no longer available for emergencies outside my scheduled shifts. My father said I was punishing the family. I said I was simply doing my job. The job they had made clear was all I would ever be trusted to do. The real disaster came 3 weeks after the succession announcement. Trevor, in his infinite business school wisdom, had decided to renegotiate our contracts with several key suppliers. He thought he could leverage better pricing using tactics from his consulting days. What he did not understand was that these relationships were built on 15 years of trust and personal connections. Our produce supplier who gave us first pick of seasonal vegetables because I had helped his daughter get a culinary scholarship. Our butcher who saved us premium cuts because my grandfather had helped him start his business decades ago. Our wine distributor who gave us access to limited allocations because I had spent years learning about wine to better pair with our menu. Trevor treated them all like vendor relationships to be optimized. He sent form emails demanding price reductions. He threatened to take our business elsewhere. He acted like every transaction was adversarial. Within a week 2 suppliers dropped us entirely. 3 others put us on standard pricing, which meant significant cost increases. Our wine distributor stopped offering us special allocations. I watched this unfold with detached interest. When Trevor came to me asking why our costs were suddenly skyrocketing, I explained the history of each relationship and what he had destroyed. I offered no suggestions on how to repair the damage. That was his problem now. The breaking point came 4 weeks after the succession announcement. It was a Friday night. Trevor had planned a special tasting menu to attract food critics and social media influencers. His big debut as the new face of Castellanos. I worked my regular shift that day. Prepped everything that needed to be ready. Left detailed notes for the evening team. And at 5 o'clock I clocked out and went home. My phone started ringing at 6. I silenced it. By 7 I had 15 missed calls. By 8 Trevor was texting that it was an emergency and he needed me. I finally responded around 9. I said I was not scheduled to work that evening. I said I hoped the tasting menu went well. The next morning I arrived to find my father and Trevor waiting in the kitchen. The tasting menu had been a disaster. The evening sous chef had been overwhelmed. 2 critics had walked out after waiting too long for food. An influencer with 500,000 followers had posted about the disappointing experience. The damage to our reputation was significant. My father said I should have been there. He said I knew this was an important night. I said I knew it was Trevor's important night. His big vision for the restaurant's future. I asked how my presence would have supported that vision. Trevor said I was sabotaging him deliberately. He said I was jealous and petty. I looked at my brother. Really looked at him. The golden child who had always gotten everything he wanted. Who had been told his entire life that his MBA made him qualified to run a business he did not understand. Who thought leadership was about authority rather than competence. I said I was not sabotaging anything. I said I was simply an employee doing my job. If the restaurant could not function without me working unpaid overtime and covering for every operational gap, then perhaps the new owner needed to reconsider his business model. My father's face went red. He said after everything they had done for me, this was how I repaid them. I asked what exactly they had done for me. Given me a job at minimum wage for 15 years while I built their business? Taught me that loyalty and sacrifice meant nothing when it came to succession? Shown me that my work was valuable enough to depend on but not valuable enough to reward with ownership? My mother appeared in the doorway. She looked tired and older than I remembered. She said we were a family. She said family did not abandon each other. I said gently that I had not abandoned anyone. They had made it clear what my place in this family was. I was the workhorse. The reliable one who would keep working herself to death while Trevor got the glory. I was done accepting that role. Trevor said fine, if that was how I felt maybe I should find another job. His voice shook with anger. I pulled an envelope from my pocket and placed it on the counter. My official letter of resignation effective in 2 weeks. The silence that followed was absolute. My father said I could not be serious. The restaurant needed me. The menu was mine. The kitchen staff was loyal to me. The reputation we had built was based on my cooking. I said he should have thought of that before giving the restaurant to someone who could not tell the difference between a Bruno Eyes and a chiffonade. Trevor said I was being dramatic. He said they could replace me. He said any competent chef could follow the recipes I had developed. I smiled. I said he was welcome to try. I said he might be surprised to learn how many of those recipes existed only in my head. How many techniques I had developed through years of trial and error. How many of the staff were staying only because of their loyalty to me. My mother started crying. She begged me not to do this. She said we could work something out. They could give me partial ownership. Make me a partner. I shook my head. I said 6 weeks ago that might have meant something. Now it was just a desperate attempt to keep their free labor from walking away. Now it was too late. My 2 weeks' notice was the longest 2 weeks of my life. I came in, did my job, trained my replacement as best I could, and left exactly on time every day. Trevor was barely speaking to me. My father looked at me like I was a stranger. My mother kept trying to convince me to stay. On my last day, several of the kitchen staff gave me a card they had all signed. 3 of them handed me their own resignation letters. They said if I was leaving they wanted to come with me. They said I had taught them everything they knew and they would rather work with me than for Trevor. Marco, my sous chef, pulled me aside. He said he had been offered a position at another restaurant but stayed because of me. He asked if I had plans. If there was any chance he could follow me to whatever came next. I said honestly that I did not know what came next. But I took his number and promised to stay in touch. Walking out of Castellanos for the last time felt surreal. This building had been my second home for 15 years. I knew every corner, every quirk, every smell. The way the floorboards creaked by the walk-in cooler. The exact temperature where the oven ran too hot. The rhythm of service on a busy Saturday night. But it was not mine. It had never been mine. And I was finally accepting that truth. I had saved aggressively over the years despite my low salary. Living in my tiny apartment, keeping expenses minimal. $80,000 sat in my savings account. Not enough to open my own restaurant, but enough to give me options. The call started 3 days after I left. The new head chef Trevor had hired from a chain restaurant had quit after one dinner service. He said the kitchen was chaos and the equipment was temperamental and the staff was hostile. I did not answer. A week after I left, Marco texted me that he had given his notice. So had 3 other key kitchen staff members. Trevor was struggling to maintain quality with an increasingly inexperienced team. I sent Marco a thumbs up emoji and nothing else. 2 weeks after I left, my mother showed up at my apartment. She looked exhausted. She said the restaurant was falling apart. They had failed another health inspection. 2 long-time customers had complained about food quality. Reviews online were becoming increasingly negative. She begged me to come back. She said they would give me whatever I wanted. Partnership. Equal ownership with Trevor. Complete control of the kitchen. I made her tea and we sat in my small living room. I said gently that I appreciated the offer but I could not come back. Not because I was angry, though I was. Not because I wanted revenge, though I would be lying if I said I did not feel some satisfaction. But because I had finally learned to value myself the way they never had. She cried and said they had made a terrible mistake. She said my father knew it. Even Trevor was starting to understand. She asked what it would take to fix this. I said honestly that I did not know if it could be fixed. Trust once broken was hard to rebuild. I had spent 15 years proving my worth and it had not been enough. I did not know what more I could possibly prove. After she left, I sat with my laptop and started researching small business loans. Rental spaces that might work for a small casual restaurant. The kind of place I had always dreamed of opening. Intimate. Focused. Built on my terms. 3 weeks after I left, my father called. His voice was subdued, almost defeated. He said they had lost their liquor license due to repeated violations. He said Trevor had made a series of poor decisions that compounded existing problems. He said the restaurant was on the brink of closure. He asked me what they should do. I said gently that they should probably ask Trevor. He was the owner. He was the one with the MBA and the business connections. Surely he could develop a strategic plan to address their challenges. My father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said he had been wrong. Not just about the succession. About everything. About assuming my work came from obligation rather than love. About taking my dedication for granted. About believing that business education was more valuable than practical experience. He said he was sorry. I said I appreciated that. I said I really did. But sorry did not give me back 15 years of unpaid overtime. It did not return the relationships I had sacrificed or the opportunities I had missed. It did not change the fact that they had chosen to give my life's work to someone else. He asked if there was any chance, any possibility that I might consider coming back, not as head chef but as a partner. Equal footing with Trevor. Full authority to make changes. I told him I would think about it. And I meant it. Not because I planned to say yes, but because I owed him the courtesy of genuine consideration. That evening I met with a real estate agent. She showed me a small space in an up-and-coming neighborhood. Former coffee shop with most of the equipment still in place. Rent was high but manageable. Size was perfect for the intimate dining experience I envisioned. I could see it so clearly. 20 seats maximum. Seasonal menu that changed weekly based on what was fresh and available. No corporate suppliers, just direct relationships with local farms and producers. The kind of food I had always wanted to make but never could under the constraints of Castellano's family-style Italian menu. I put down a deposit that night. 4 weeks after leaving Castellano's, I signed a lease on my new space. I called it Ember. Simple. Clean. Mine. Marco signed on as my sous chef before I even asked. 2 other talented cooks from Castellano's joined us. We spent weeks getting the space ready. Painting. Installing equipment. Testing recipes. Building a menu that reflected everything I had learned over 15 years but freed from tradition and expectation. My parents called several times during this period. Trevor called once. They all said similar things. Castellano's was struggling. Maybe we could work together somehow. Maybe I could consult. Maybe we could find a compromise. I said politely that I was busy building my own restaurant. I wished them well. I meant it more or less. Ember opened on a Friday night in October. 52 reservations for our first service. Every single one confirmed. Local food critics who had been following my departure from Castellano's. Regular customers from the old restaurant who had heard I was opening my own place. Food bloggers excited about the concept. The first service was beautiful. Terrifying and chaotic and imperfect but beautiful. The kitchen hummed with focused energy. Every plate that went out was exactly what I had envisioned. The dining room buzzed with appreciation and excitement. At the end of the night, Marco and I stood in the kitchen looking at the empty dining room through the pass. He said, "We did it. We actually did it." I said, "Not yet. This was just the beginning. The real work was building something sustainable. Something that would last." But I felt hope for the first time in years. Real genuine hope. The reviews started coming in within days. Glowing descriptions of the food. Praise for the intimate atmosphere and innovative menu. Comparisons to high-end tasting menu restaurants in major cities. One critic wrote that I had finally been freed to show my true talent without the constraints of family expectations and traditional Italian cuisine. Within 3 weeks we were booked solid. A month out. Then 6 weeks. Then 2 months. I hired additional staff. Expanded our hours slightly. Started working on a cookbook deal with a small publisher who had reached out after reading the reviews. My mother came to eat at Ember about 2 months after we opened. She came alone. Sat at the bar. Ordered the tasting menu. Cried quietly while eating my duck breast with cherry gastric. Afterward she found me in the kitchen. She hugged me without saying anything for a long moment. She told me the food was the best she had ever tasted. She said I had surpassed anything she had imagined I was capable of. She said she was proud and sorry and ashamed all at once. I hugged her back. I said I forgave her. I did not say I had forgotten. There was a difference. She said Castellano's would probably close within the year. Trevor had given up and gone back to consulting. My father was trying to run it himself, but at 73 he did not have the energy. They were losing money every month. She did not ask me to save it. She just wanted me to know. 6 months after opening Ember, I received a call from a restaurant group based in the city. They had been following my success. They wanted to discuss opportunities for expansion. Multiple locations. Investment capital. National presence. I met with them. Listened to their pitch. The numbers were staggering. Life-changing. Everything I could have imagined and more. I turned them down. Not because the offer was not tempting. But because I had learned something valuable from my 15 years at Castellano's. Success built on other people's terms was not really success. It was just another form of obligation. Ember would grow organically. On my timeline. According to my vision. If that meant staying small and intimate, then so be it. If it meant eventually expanding, then it would be my choice, my way, my terms. I had spent enough of my life building other people's dreams. Now I was building my own. Castellano's closed 9 months after I left. The announcement was in the local paper. 41 years of family tradition ending. My parents were retiring. Trevor had moved back to Boston. I felt sadness about that. Real genuine sadness. Not for the business I had lost, but for the family legacy that had ended. For my grandfather's dream that could not survive the transition. For the relationships that had been damaged maybe permanently by pride and poor decisions. But I did not feel regret. Not anymore. Ember was thriving. I was thriving. I had built something beautiful and sustainable and entirely mine. I had proven that I did not need their restaurant to succeed. I had proven that I did not need their approval to know my worth. The best revenge was not watching them fail. It was building something so successful that their failure became irrelevant. It was living well on my own terms. It was finally understanding that being undervalued said everything about them and nothing about me. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply walking away. Not in anger. Not in spite. But in recognition that you deserve more than you are being offered. That your worth is not determined by who chooses to see it. That building your own dream is better than killing yourself for someone else's. I never went back to Castellano's. Not even to say goodbye. That chapter was closed. Written. Complete. I was writing a new story now. One where I was not behind the scenes or taken for granted or expected to sacrifice endlessly without recognition. One where I was the author of my own success. And it was the best thing I had ever created.